Hey Saints, I just wanted to point out this is Bill Salus with L.A. Marzulli. Bill Salus has got a new book out. I think it's called Apocalypse Road. And it's a follow-on to, he did a Revelation Road book before. I know a lot of people debated, Psalm 83 prior to the tribulation, during the tribulation, is it part of the Armageddon scenario? Did it already happen? Like that Amir Safari, I think, says that. There was a lot of noise made, and people wanted to debate that Psalm 83, that Bill Salus popularized, that interpretation as being a prophecy for now. So I think he dropped off of folks' radar for a while. Now he's back out with his book. I haven't read the book, but I've seen, I think, 2 or 3 interviews now where he's talking about this new book, Apocalypse Road. And he's making a bunch of new points. And I think, I wanted to do this video only to kind of point you to go look at some of these interviews he's doing. I'll just give you a couple that I think are extremely interesting, and you can do what you want with them. But the first one is, people debate, does the War of Gog and Magog, and in the case of Bill Salus, Psalm 83, happen before the tribulation or not? And he says, yes, it happens before the tribulation. But the interesting thing he arrived at, which is what I arrived at by different means, a couple of 2, 3, 4 months ago, was that the tribulation period doesn't start until after Seal 5. And he comes at it a totally different way, which I think is interesting. I'll give you one hint, but I think you should come watch the video. He was taking a look here at Seal 5. Let me see here. When the Lamb opened the 5th seal, I saw under the altar the souls of those that had been slaughtered because of the word of God and the testimony they had given. They cried out with a loud voice, Holy and true sovereign, how long will it be before you judge and take revenge on those living on the earth who shed our blood? Each of them was given a white robe, and they were told to rest a little longer until the number of their fellow servants and their brothers were completed, who would be killed as they had been. And then the 6th seal opens, and the point he was making is that these that got killed here during, or reporting here during the 5th seal that they had been killed because of their testimony, were asking how long until you judge and take revenge, which means, Bill Salus gets out of that the wrath or the retribution of the Lord had not started yet, meaning the tribulation had not started yet. And I came to it a totally different way, right? In Acts 2, when Peter on the day of Pentecost was saying, this was the promised outpouring of the Spirit, and then he continued quoting from Joel 2, and he said the sun will go dark and the moon to blood before that great day. And the point I was making is that the sun going dark and the moon to blood before the great day is actually here in Seal 6. The sun turned black as sackcloth, and the full moon turned red as blood. And so, yeah, Revelation was written well after, Acts 2. But when does that happen? We see it happen here in the prophecy given by John in Revelation as part of the 6th seal. And then the great day comes, for the great day has come. Who will stand? And I was making the point that I think it's just plain here. He's saying the day of the Lord, The 70th week of Daniel, the time of Jacob's trouble, starts at the end of the sixth seal, and Bill Salus puts, overlays it almost the same way, but he's going with the fact that you've got these saints that are under the, altar, and they're saying, when does the revenge take place for those that shed our blood? And he's pointing to the fact that the day of the Lord couldn't have started yet, or they would know the answer to that. And I thought, bam, that is awesome. I thought I was kind of out there a little bit with that interpretation that I had provided, but he landed this on the same program with the same answer. And he also thought that these wars described here with the rider on the red horse and the pale horse were probably representing Psalm 83 and Ezekiel 38 and 39, which I'd also gotten there the same way, or in a totally different way. I had lined up how Joel described that first battle of the end time army in Joel 2. Before you get to those statements I just read you from Joel 2, it describes the end time army, and it ties up and is identical to the Ezekiel 38-39 description of that scourge of army coming from the north, and they get buried and their stink rises up. All that lines up between Joel 2, Ezekiel 38, especially Ezekiel 39. And then the fact that they were not human, you get that in Joel 1 and Joel 2 in particular, because they fall on a sword and they're not injured. And we see here, if you look at the Greek in the fourth seal here, that they kill with wars, famines, plagues, and wild animals of the earth. And a bunch of people point to this, that the Greek behind this wild animals here, the therion, doesn't necessarily mean human or natural wild animals. It could mean distorted humans that were in a rage, right? And I sort of suspect that that is, say it's the Nephilim or polluted DNA, whatever, but that's the end time army. And so I got there a totally different way, but I landed with the same. Now, the next point that he's making that I think is really interesting is he looked into this rider here on the green horse, and his name was Death, and Hades followed him. And he made a super interesting observation. If you go to Isaiah, where the covenant with death is described, let me just zip over there, hang on. It's Isaiah 28. Therefore hear the message from the Lord, you scoffers who rule this people that are in Jerusalem, right? So he's talking about the Jewish leaders. Because you have said, we have entered into a covenant with death and agreement with Sheol. What were the two riders on that pale horse? Death with Sheol. So when the overwhelming scourge makes its choice, it cannot reach us, since we have made lies our refuge and concealed ourselves in falsehood. And the point Bill Salus is making is this covenant with death is the covenant that you get in Daniel 9 that gets violated halfway through. And so with a little bit of speculation, but with some more scriptural support, what he's saying is this must be the covenant with that end time beast system, described in Revelation 17 with the Antichrist and the false prophet. And he makes a pretty compelling argument toward it. And, he looks at the description there in Revelation 6, where they have control to kill over a quarter of the people of the earth. And what he thinks it's saying is that this beast system here in Revelation 4 already has control over a quarter part of the earth, and so it's killing then with these different techniques. And he's saying, well, if those things are true, there's been plenty of biblical proof points to point out that the beast system, the religious part, is the Catholic Church, and the control part, political part, is probably being brought or fostered by the Antichrist, right? And so he sees that the Catholic Church is, got a billion whatever adherents, and it's set up all over the world. And if it follows in the pattern of the Inquisitions, that they're already drunk with the blood of the saints, they've already had that pattern of killing people that don't submit to the Catholic doctrine. In this case, it would probably be the Pope saying that you need to worship the Antichrist, right? So that's where Bill Salus goes. I just thought I'd point this out, Saints, because I think he's adding to this story a little bit, and it just blew me away when he started describing where the Ezekiel 38, 39, and potentially Psalm 83 fits. It fits in those sealed judgments. I was kind of feeling like I was out there on a limb. And then he was talking about that the day of the Lord doesn't start until after the fifth seal, which I think it's clear. Once you allow your brain to go there, if you look at Acts 2 and Joel 2, it's pointing to after the sun goes dark and the moon to blood, and that's right what you see in seal 6. So I think the day of the Lord starts right there at the end of seal 6, and it says, the great day is here, who can stand? I think that was just a really good observation he made there, and sort of fires me up. Now, him, L.A. Marzulli, he also got interviewed by Gary Stearman, Prophecy Watchers. All of those folks are pre-trib rapture believers. He points to that the church is in heaven in Revelation 4, which I completely agree with. So all of this is post the church leaving. But I think it solves so many problems to have the Ezekiel 38, 39 war defined there in the seals, because they burn the weapons for 7 years on the heels of that war, meaning that the day of the Lord probably couldn't have started yet, since it's only 7 years long. Why would they be burning the weapons, the Jewish people be burning the weapons into the millennial reign of Christ, right? That's the problem that you're left with in Ezekiel 38 and 39. But if that war really is, the fourth seal, or potentially the third seal, we don't know what that time span is, but it leaves time of 7 years plus for that to be true. So just thought I'd point that out to you, Saints. It kind of fires me up when you get another little nugget that adds to the scenario. I'll paste the link for this L.A. Marzulli interview down below. Also go look for the Gary Stearman one. He repeats a lot of the information, so I'm only going to post one. But I think there's some subtle things he gets into and answers better between the two videos. So, check that out. God bless everybody.